Talking with the experts.
Hello and welcome to Talking with the Experts. My name's Rose Davidson from rosedavidson.com, and Talking with the Experts is about all things business by business owners for business owners. And you can find it on SoundCloud and on YouTube and a lot of the other podcast streaming platforms. Today my guest is Charles Reed from Texas in the United States, and his business is GetPayroll. And we're going to be discussing payroll for small business. And Charles is a certified public accountant, so that's a CPA, and we've got those here as well. He's a US tax court practitioner, a member of Internal Revenue Service Advisory Council, and the founder of GetPayroll. His companies have provided full-service payroll services, payroll tax services, and other payroll-related services since 1991. Charles is an accomplished senior executive and entrepreneur with more than 50 years of financial leadership experience in a broad range of industries and the author of 4 books, and we'll be discussing his latest book later on. Welcome, Charles.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you, Rose.
Great. So, and we were discussing just before we went to air that payroll is pretty much the same wherever you live. The principles are the same, and the taxes, are just calculated differently. And the IRS is probably a bit more stringent than the ATO here. However, tell me why and how payroll and HR are an integral part of any business.
Well, obviously, very few people work for free. Okay. Some of us entrepreneurs do, or we end up working for free even if we're not intending to. But the people we hire are not going to work for free. And if you don't pay them and pay them on time, they're not going to be happy. If you short their payroll, if you short their check, they're not going to be pleased. If you overpay them, they're not going to tell you either. Okay. If you short them a nickel, they'll let you know. You overpay them by 500 pounds, they won't say a thing. So it's out of your pocket. So payroll is very important for morale purposes. I remember one time we'd had a client that had problems, and I ended up driving 50 miles to deliver a payroll. It was a roofing company, and he had 35 Mexicans out there in the parking lot with roofing knives on their belt waiting for their paychecks.
Wow. They
were very happy to see me. So was he, because he didn't want to tell them they weren't going to get paid on Friday afternoon. So a lot of them would not have showed up on Monday if he hadn't been able to pay them. We hadn't been able to get them out there to them. So it's very important for morale purposes, because the most important asset you have in a business is your people. They accomplish it. I mean, if you're a sole proprietor and it's just you, it's all on you. But the moment you start adding people, they're the asset that gets the business done. They create the income, they create the revenue, they create the product, they create the contacts with the clients. They do all of it. I mean, I've got a marketing manager and a marketing group, and I've got operations, and I've got banking, and I've got tax people, and so on. And I treasure them because they make my business go. Without them, I couldn't do it all. No way in God's green earth could I do everything they do in a day.
No.
So they're very valuable. The HR is part of the whole morale thing. You keep the benefits in place. You keep them happy. You give them a shoulder to cry on when they need it. A soft boot in the ass when they need it. On and on and on. And that's all part of the HR, along with the benefits and so on and so forth. So everything goes to doing what you can to keep your employees happy. And that's part of payroll, part of HR.
Yeah, I know. I studied HR some years ago, and I know a lot of businesses, if they've got more than one employee, don't have an HR department, and they don't have policies or procedures in place that a HR department would provide or would implement for them. What can you advise businesses that have more than one employee? Is it advisable to have someone that's trained in HR?
Well, It's nice to have that. We provide for our clients a service for a small fee, a few dollars a month. They have experts they can call on. But one of the things that you pointed out, and it's extremely important, is you need a policy manual. Okay. You need an employee handbook that you give them, they read and sign off on, and give you back a signed piece of paper that goes in the file saying they've read and understood that. And that's protection for both you and them. Let's say you get an employee you have to terminate. They're just not working out. They show up late, they're rude, whatever. And you have to terminate them. In the United States, if you terminate them without cause, they draw unemployment and you have to basically make that back up. Okay? So that employee handbook becomes your contract with your employees. It says, you do this, this, and this, we'll keep you working if we can. Or we'll have to lay you off without cause and then you'll get your unemployment. But if you don't do what's required of you, then I can terminate you and you don't get your unemployment, and it doesn't cost the employer all those benefits for that person that they've had to terminate. And it gives them, it lets you describe the mission of the company. It lets you describe the culture of the company. It lets you describe the things they should know. I mean, your dress code may be, used to be at one company I worked for, dark suits, white shirts, dark ties, period. Black shoes, short hair. That's what you had to do. My dress code for my company is a little simpler. It's you must. So, but those are the things that the employee handbook will do. It describes the benefits. It describes what they can expect. It describes when they can expect a raise, a review, all these details. Now, an employee handbook is not static. It changes because as you hire people, things happen and you go, oh, I don't have a procedure. I don't have a policy for that. I'm going to have to write one. And so, you write one. The first time, a lady comes in pregnant or a guy comes in drunk or whatever, and you realize I don't have a policy to handle that. You write a policy, you promulgate it, you get every one of your employees to sign off on it, that they've read it and understood it, and it goes in their file. So it's a living document. It changes. I've had mine for 30 years. We put several changes in last year, and the laws change. Family medical leave and other things that the IRS has passed, the Congress has passed, the IRS implements, all the COVID things that happened in the U.S. last year. All these then have to be included in the handbook, and it has to be updated on a regular basis. But you've got to have that. Otherwise, it's willy-nilly. And the first time you treat one person one way and another way, somebody's going to scream discrimination. And you've got no defense. But if you have a policy and you treat everybody the same way, okay, who am I discriminating against? Everybody? That's allowed.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. My husband and I owned a small retail food business some years ago. And after I did my HR studies, I actually wrote a policy and procedure manual. And my husband thought I was mental, but it proved to be quite a good thing because, we had some staff members that weren't doing the right thing, even though they had signed off on the book. They still, because they didn't think it was, because it was a retail food business, they didn't think that they needed to, follow it or even to sign off on it. And they just thought it was ridiculous. But anyway, they were, encouraged quite strongly to sign off on it. And and some staff members weren't doing the right thing. So it was easier for us to terminate their employment because even though they signed off on it, and I don't know if they'd read it or they hadn't read it, but they signed on it. So, that's their thing saying that, yes, they agreed to what had been written. So they had no comeback to say, that we'd unfairly dismissed them. So,
Exactly.
Yeah, I totally agree that every business, even if you're just doing it by yourself, it's a really great way to start your business if you have these policies and procedures in place, because down the track you probably will be hiring somebody.
You will, and the other thing is, it helps you set in your mind what you want to do. You establish your mission statement, what your culture is, what you expect, how you expect them to treat customers or equipment or facilities or you and each other. And that thought process in putting down those rules, those policies, helps you establish what you want your business to be. So it's a good exercise for the employer to do that. Then that becomes the contract. But it forces the employer to think about what's important and what's not. Let's go back to dress code for just a second. In some places, it doesn't matter. You don't care if they come in tank tops and torn blue jeans. But if you're a high-end retail, the ladies need to be in skirts and the men need to have ties and coats. That's the image you're presenting, okay? But if you don't hone that image and put it on writing and be able to explain it and why you're doing this, then you don't know your own business yet.
No, I agree. I totally agree. And you were saying too that about payroll, it is a must-have. And I know that in Australia now, it's now before last year, I think it was done. You could do it manually, but now you need to do it electronically so that the tax department can have a record of what you're paying out and so forth. So I think and at tax time it really does help the business because it saves a lot of manual calculation.
When I first became a CPA, I helped my father with his taxes, and he had paper and pen sheets that he'd created and mimeographed, if you remember that, off to be able to do his payroll manually on. And I think he closed his business still doing it that way. We, of course, had shifted to electronic. We have very sophisticated software that handles that and shoots off all the taxes electronically and direct deposits and all those things. The world has changed. Technology has changed, and a business needs to change with it. Payroll has changed. HR has changed. For instance, back to the employee handbook, when I first started and did mine, you bought a DVD and you just selected pieces out of it and cut and paste. Well, it's all online now. The DVDs are gone away. So you can go online and select what you need and build your manual with legal phrases that'll hold up in court, which is important too. So the technology has changed. When we started, we did a lot of manual entry on payroll. We do almost no manual entry anymore. Most of our clients do it electronically into the web. We process it, take care of the taxes, take care of the forms. Many of the forms are electronic now. Almost all the taxes are electronic. The world has changed. It's going to change more.
Yeah, I agree.
It changed last year, and it's going to change this year.
I agree, and businesses really need to move with the times, and electronic systems really aren't that expensive if you look at what the benefits are in the long run. I think it's just it's less headache for the business owner.
Absolutely, technology, frankly, frees up time. It almost always does. I mean, it creates ways to waste it as well. I mean, just look at Facebook or TikTok or whatever, and, you can get lost in that stuff and be gone for a day. But, we can do many more payrolls in a day with less people than we used to,
Absolutely.
Which allows us to charge less, which is savings for our clients, but we still make good money. So it's a win-win.
Yeah, I agree. So I guess getting to the point of payroll and HR, if these things aren't set up correctly in the first place, how can they be devastating to any small business?
Well, obviously, you can't fire people legitimately and get away with it and not pay huge sums and get lawsuits, discrimination lawsuits, and wrongful termination, and all the things that can come up from not having good HR in place. If you don't control your benefits well, one trick I learned many years ago, it's when you sign people up for the group health plan, you also have to take the people who say they don't want it and get them to sign off on it, that they don't want it, and keep that. We had a case here 25 years ago, a guy who was not well educated, and he said he didn't want it, but they didn't get him to sign off on it. Well, his wife became pregnant, and they had a very, very difficult pregnancy with a child that was born with great problems. Since they didn't have insurance, he said, well, I have insurance with the employer. The employer says, no, you didn't apply for it. Well, the court said, since you can't prove he said he didn't want it, you got to pay for it. And that was 30 years ago, and it was over $2 million then. Wow. That's because the child, it was a lifetime of care for a child that had some terrible, terrible problems. I felt for the family and the child, but he said he didn't want the insurance. That was his choice. It was optional. So that kind of thing can happen. If you don't pay people properly, you also can get in the U.S. of course get sued. Yeah, for we do wage too. Theft, yeah. For any number of things. There was the big thing on McDonald's franchises here a couple of years ago with debit cards, and they were charging the employees, and so on. It was kind of a mess. And they got sued big time. And it was all in national news, and McDonald's got into trouble, even though they said, hey, these are franchises. This is not us. But it was a big mess because they weren't doing things right. And if you don't have it on paper and you don't follow it, both in HR and in payroll, you're throwing your fate to the winds, and it'll take you into all kinds of strange places.
Absolutely, absolutely. So tell me about your latest book, Charles.
The latest book is the Payroll Book, a guide for small business and startups. It's, as I said earlier, it's 30 years of running a payroll service bureau. It's still down to about 90,000 words. There's a lot of good stuff in it. Some it's a little dry. It's payroll. Sorry. But there's things on HR and payroll, and there's horror stories and gotchas and things to remember and string on finger and this kind of thing that make it a fairly interesting read for the most part. But it's really designed to go on the shelf, and when you got a problem, pull it out and start reading. Oh,
good. So it's not bedtime reading then?
Well, if you have insomnia, it's great.
Okay, I'll remember that. Where can they find it, Charles?
It's available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, other fine bookstores, or thepayrollbook.com. It's our own website for the book, so it's available there. You can find me at GetPayroll as well.
Lovely. It's been a real pleasure speaking with you today and talking with you. I know that payroll is very important, and I know HR is very important, and I can't really stress enough that people really need to get their HR act together, because it is vital for your business to survive and to thrive.
It really is. If you don't do it, you're just an accident waiting to happen. You're going to get caught. You're going to get hit. You're going to be sorry. So do it, and do it right, and do it early.
Perfect. All right, Charles, thank you so much for your time. And I hope that we can chat again later in the year. We might be able to find something else to talk about.
My pleasure, Rose.
Okay. Have a great night.
You too.